That night felt like any other long haul. Endless road, diesel fumes, and the hum of my truck's engine keeping me company. I was hauling freight through central Wyoming, eastbound on Highway 26. The moon hung low, silver light glinting off the asphalt. Out there, miles from anywhere, the world feels like it belongs only to you until it doesn't. It was close to 11 p.m. when my CB radio crackled to life. Just static at first, then a faint whisper cut through. It sounded like someone saying, "Hello," or maybe "help." I adjusted the volume, but all I heard was breathing, soft, uneven, close to the mic. "Copy that. Who's out there?" I asked. No response, just the quiet hiss of the channel. Then my headlights caught something strange up ahead, a semi-truck parked sideways across the narrow highway. No hazard lights, no reflectors. Its driver's door hung open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. My gut tightened. I slowed to a stop about 30 feet back, keeping the engine running. Old habits from my army days. You don't kill the engine when things feel wrong. I grabbed the flashlight and stepped out, the cold Wyoming air biting at my face. "Driver, you okay?" My voice echoed against the emptiness. No answer. Only wind and the faint rustle of tall grass nearby. Climbing up to the cab, I found a denim jacket tossed on the seat, a cup of coffee still half full, and the CB mic dangling by its cord. The air inside was still warm, like whoever had been there left only minutes ago. But there was no driver, no signs of a struggle, just silence that felt too careful. Then I heard it, 3 slow steps crunching the gravel behind the trailer. Not hurried, not afraid, just deliberate. I ducked down, my heart slamming against my ribs. "Show yourself," I shouted into the dark. That's when 3 silhouettes rose from the ditch. They didn't speak. One crouched, then crack. A gunshot split the air. The mirror beside me exploded into shards. I fired twice toward the muzzle flash. A grunt answered back, and 2 shadows scattered into the field. I bolted for my truck, bullets snapping past, gravel kicking at my boots. I dove into the cab, slammed the door, and floored it, the roar of the engine drowning everything else. In the rearview mirror, one figure stood motionless in my headlights, before melting into the night. But what scared me most wasn't the attack. It was the thought that maybe, just maybe, they hadn't been human at all. By the time I reached the faint glow of a gas station miles down the road, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I pulled in, parked beneath the flickering lights, and just sat there, staring at my reflection in the cracked windshield. My heart was still racing, my throat dry as sandpaper. I thought I'd escaped whatever that was on the highway. I thought wrong. Dispatch had already confirmed my call. They said a sheriff's unit was en route to the location I'd reported, the abandoned semi near Riverworth. I didn't go back. Couldn't. Instead, I sat there until dawn, the neon buzzing above me, every shadow outside the cab twitching like it was alive. The next morning, I found myself sitting in a small sheriff's substation in Casper. The place smelled of old coffee and dust. My hands still trembled as I filled out the incident report, the pen scraping unevenly across the paper. The officers listened politely, but I could see the look in their eyes, the same one I'd seen back in Iraq when someone reported something too strange to believe. Finally, one of them leaned back and asked, "You sure you saw 3 people? Not just one?" I nodded. 3, maybe more. One of them fired first. Hours passed before another deputy walked in, radio still clipped to his shoulder. "We found the truck," he said. My stomach tightened. He read from his notepad. "Engine's cold. Cab's empty. No sign of the driver." That alone wasn't what froze the room. It was what came next. There's blood. Not much, but enough to tell someone got hurt. It starts near the passenger side and trails off into the field. Then it just stops. No footprints. No tire tracks. Just gone. He showed me a photo on his phone. A thin line of dark stains smeared through gravel, vanishing into knee-high grass. My mouth went dry. "What about the driver?" I asked. "Still missing," the deputy said. His phone and wallet were in the cab, even his keys. I walked slowly to the door and spoke again, my voice firmer. "You have the wrong house. There's no Lorraine here." Silence. Then, through the door, a low voice answered. She always let me in. She said I could come back when I was better. The doorknob turned slightly. Not enough to open, just enough to test. Every instinct screamed. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, whispering into the receiver, "There's a man outside my door. He's trying to get in." The operator told me to stay calm and stay on the line. But when I checked the live feed again, he was gone. Or at least, I thought he was, until the motion alert chimed again. The camera showed him standing farther away now, on the sidewalk, staring up at my bedroom window. It was a Thursday night, cold, wet, and silent except for the steady hiss of rain. I had just finished a late shift at the coffee shop and was walking home through downtown Tacoma. The streets were nearly empty. Most shops were closed, their neon lights bleeding into puddles on the cracked pavement. My phone battery blinked at 10%, and my umbrella fought against the wind. It should have been an ordinary walk, 15 minutes tops, but I still remember the exact moment it stopped feeling safe. Footsteps, faint at first, just barely cutting through the rain. Then closer, heavier. I glanced over my shoulder and saw a man about half a block behind me. He wore a black hoodie with the hood pulled low, his hands deep in his pockets. Nothing unusual until I crossed the street, and he crossed too. I slowed down to tie my shoe near a closed bakery. He slowed too. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he lived in the same direction. But when I turned left instead of right at the next corner, he mirrored me again. No hesitation. My heart pounded harder with every step. The rain suddenly felt colder, the night quieter. I could see the lights of a small convenience store up ahead, the only open place for blocks. I pushed through the door, the bell chiming like salvation. Warm air hit me, along with the smell of stale coffee and candy. The man behind the counter nodded politely. I grabbed a water and some gum I didn't need, pretending everything was normal. Then, through the window, I saw him. The man in the hoodie stood outside beneath the awning. He wasn't looking at his phone. He wasn't smoking. He was just staring at the door. At me. My voice shook as I told the cashier, "Someone's been following me." He leaned to look out, then back at me. "You can stay here a while," he said quietly. For several tense minutes, we both watched the man. Then, a white cargo van pulled up to the curb behind it. The headlights cut through the rain, blinding for a moment. The man turned, opened the passenger door, and climbed in. No hesitation. The van idled for a few seconds, then pulled away slowly, disappearing around the corner. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe it was over. Maybe I was just paranoid. But when I stepped back outside and started walking again, I caught something in the reflection of a shop window. Headlights, moving slow, right behind me. It was the same white van, creeping through the rain. And this time, I knew whoever was inside wasn't just following me, they were hunting me. Rain hammered against the street as I quickened my pace. Every few seconds, I glanced over my shoulder, and there it was, the same white van, rolling slowly behind me. Its headlights painted my shadow across the slick pavement like a ghost trying to catch me. I turned down a brighter street, hoping it would keep going. It didn't. The van matched my turns, its engine barely audible over the storm. Panic clawed up my throat. I gripped my keys between my fingers the way my mom had taught me. A makeshift weapon. The road ahead was empty. Just one open bakery sign flickering pink in the rain. I crossed faster, heart pounding. Then the van honked. One short, sharp beep. I flinched, nearly dropping my umbrella. Enough. I darted toward the nearest alley, hoping to lose them. The smell hit me first. Damp trash, oil, and old rot. Water dripped from a rusted fire escape. I ran deeper into the narrow passage, shoes splashing through puddles. Behind me, tires screeched softly. The van had stopped at the entrance. For a moment, only the sound of rain. Then, a sliding door, slow, deliberate. I ducked behind a dumpster, holding my breath. My hands trembled around my umbrella handle. The alley filled with shadows from the van's headlights, cutting across brick and trash cans. I could hear footsteps now, heavy, cautious, coming closer. Then I saw it, flashing red and blue light reflecting off wet pavement. A police cruiser was parked at the end of the street, maybe half a block away. Hope surged through me like electricity. I bolted from behind the dumpster and sprinted toward it, yelling, "Help! Please!" The officer, a woman, stepped out immediately, one hand raised. "What's happening?" "There's a van," I gasped. "White cargo van. It's been following me." She motioned me inside the cruiser, slammed the door, and grabbed her radio. When she drove toward the alley, the van was gone. Vanished. Only my umbrella lay in the puddle where I dropped it. She asked for details. No windows, dent on the side, missing hubcap, dirty paint. I told her everything. She nodded, jotting notes while the rain streaked across the windshield. "You did the right thing," she said. "Next time, don't wait. Call right away." She drove me home and waited until I was safely inside before leaving. I double-locked the door, collapsed on the floor, and tried to slow my heartbeat. That night, I barely slept. Every car passing outside made me check the blinds. Every creak felt like footsteps. The next morning, I walked back to the convenience store in daylight. My umbrella was gone. The clerk recognized me instantly. "You made it home okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Did you see that van again?" He hesitated. "That van's been around here before. Sometimes I wonder, what if I hadn't turned into that alley? What if the officer hadn't been there? Because part of me thinks the van wasn't hunting for the first time. I was trying to clear space in my apartment, just a little weekend project. My old IKEA desk had to go. It wobbled, and I'd already replaced it with a new standing one. So, I snapped a few photos, wrote a quick description, and listed it on both Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. "Good condition," I wrote. "Third floor walk up. Bring help to carry." Within an hour, a message popped up. No profile picture, just a first name, Adam. He didn't ask any normal buyer questions. No, "Is it still available?" Or "Can you lower the price?" Just, "Cash okay?" "Sure," I replied, adding that the desk was up 3 flights of stairs. He sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. His bluntness bothered me, but not enough to cancel. I texted a friend, "Meeting a buyer for the desk tonight. Just FYI." She sent back a thumbs up too, joking, "Don't get murdered." By sunset, Adam arrived. I saw him through the window first. Silver sedan, trunk already open. Inside were bungee cords, a folded blanket, and a coil of rope. My gut tightened. When I went down to meet him, he didn't smile or shake hands. He just nodded. "Third floor." "Yeah," I said. "I'll help you carry it." He hesitated at the doorway, eyes flicking over my building like he was memorizing every detail. "You live here alone?" he asked casually. I lied. "No, my roommate's just out right now." He followed me up the stairs slowly, each step creaking under his boots. His breathing never changed, calm, steady, almost rehearsed. When we reached my apartment, he stopped in the doorway, leaning in but not stepping inside. His eyes moved over the locks, the small hallway camera, and the light switch by my door. It was as if he was studying the place, not the furniture. "Nice place," he muttered. "Quiet building." We lifted the desk together, maneuvering it toward the hall, though it scraped faintly against the wall. Halfway down the steps, he spoke again, soft, almost conversational. "You hear about that woman who got killed selling furniture online?" I froze. "No," I said. "Yeah," he replied, a small grin pulling at his mouth. "Crazy world, huh?" His words weren't casual. They were placed there, sharp as a blade. I could feel him watching me as we carried the desk down. Outside, the street was dark, the air heavy. No one on the sidewalk, just the hum of his idling sedan. He tied the desk down with the rope he'd brought and handed me a stack of bills. "You ever worry meeting strangers like this?" he asked. "Not really," I said. "Maybe you should." He smiled this time. a slow, deliberate smile, before climbing into his car. As the taillights faded, I realized something. He'd never even asked for my address. So how did he know exactly where I lived? After he drove away, I stood at my window watching the empty street for a long time. The rope from his trunk had dragged along the road as he turned a corner. That's how I knew it was really over. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Back inside, I locked both deadbolts and checked the hallway camera footage. There he was, walking behind me up the stairs, cap tilted just enough to shadow his face. At one point, he even looked directly into the camera, then adjusted the brim of his hat to block it. The movement felt intentional. Too intentional. I replayed his words in my head. Maybe you should worry. Why say that after buying a desk? Why the rope? The missing smile? The questions about living alone? Trying to calm down, I made tea, turned on the TV, and texted my friend, "Sale done." Guy was weird though. She sent back a laughing emoji and said, "Weird how?" I started typing an answer, but then my buzzer rang. It wasn't a short buzz. It was one long, unbroken press. I froze. It was nearly midnight. No one ever visited that late. I walked slowly to the door, looked through the peephole, nothing. The hallway was empty. Then, my phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Is the desk still available?" The name was the same as before, Adam. He had just bought it. My fingers went cold. I blocked the number immediately, deleted the post from both apps, and reported the buyer for suspicious activity. Then I pushed a chair under the doorknob and sat on the couch, wide awake, waiting for sunrise. The apartment felt too quiet. Every little sound, pipes, footsteps, the elevator, made my heart jolt. Around 2 a.m., I thought I heard the soft thud of someone walking in the hallway outside. I turned off the TV, held my breath, and listened. Nothing. When morning came, I still hadn't slept. I decided to go outside, just to breathe. The street looked normal again. People walking dogs, cars passing, sunlight cutting across the buildings. For a moment, it all felt like maybe I'd imagined everything. Until I saw it. A silver sedan, parked half a block down. Same dent above the wheel. Same rope hanging from the trunk latch. I went back inside and bought a doorbell camera that same day. I stopped selling things online after that. From then on, I met strangers only in public, police station parking lots, grocery store lobbies, anywhere with witnesses. Still, sometimes, when I come home late, I see a car idling on the street with its headlights off. Always silver. Always waiting. That man left with my desk, but I think he took something else with him too. He took the feeling that my home was ever truly mine. In the fall of 2010, I moved to Cleveland to start my master's degree at the university downtown. It wasn't glamorous. My apartment was really just a damp basement suite tucked beneath a creaky old house on Euclid Avenue. The ceilings were low, the walls smelled faintly of mildew, and every night I heard footsteps from the tenants above, muffled but constant. Still, it was cheap and close to campus. My routine was simple: class, work, home, repeat. By October, I'd picked up a part-time job in the English department to help cover tuition. Phones, filing, and donor lists. Nothing exciting, but it meant I could afford groceries. The department chair was Dr. Leonard Katz, or Doc, as everyone called him. He was an older man with wild gray hair, a permanent coffee stain on his sweater, and a pipe he was never without, even though smoking had been banned in the building years earlier. His office sat in a quiet corner, past the copier room, where the halls always smelled like old paper and burned toner. Doc was the kind of man who talked more to himself than to others. He muttered constantly about books, deadlines, the noise upstairs. Sometimes I wasn't sure if he was addressing me or some invisible audience. Still, he was kind enough, always offering students advice and stories about the good old days. One evening, I was working late alone, sorting files while Doc finished up in his office. The hallway lights flickered. They always did. But this time, they stayed dim, humming faintly. I remember hearing his pipe clink on his desk, then silence. No footsteps, no door closing. When I peeked into his office to say goodnight, the chair was still spinning slightly, the pipe still smoking, but Doc was gone. At first, I thought maybe he'd stepped out, but the building was locked after 8 p.m. His coat and keys hung on the rack. The fan by his desk buzzed quietly. On the wall behind his desk was a faded photo of him with 3 former students. One of them was crossed out in pen. I turned off the light and left, but as I walked down the empty corridor, I heard that same faint humming again. Not from the lights this time, but deeper, like a whisper traveling through the walls. That night, back in my basement apartment, I couldn't shake the smell of smoke from my clothes, even though I hadn't been near a cigarette. The next morning, when I went back to campus, Doc's door was still closed. But what I found inside his office made me realize maybe he never left that room at all. The next morning, I arrived at the department earlier than usual. The hallways still smelled of dust and printer ink. Everything looked ordinary, except for one thing. Dr. Katz's office door was still closed. No pipe smoke, no muttering, no fan humming behind the door. I knocked softly. No answer. When I turned the knob, the door creaked open just enough to let out a faint, stale odor, tobacco and something else. Something damp and metallic. The lights were off, but sunlight leaked through the blinds, cutting across his cluttered desk. The chair sat exactly where it had been the night before. The pipe was in the same spot too, cold now, with ashes scattered across the papers. His sweater hung from the back of the chair, as if he'd only stepped away for a minute. But Doc wasn't there. I looked around nervously. His briefcase lay open on the floor, and next to it was a stack of old student files, most of them handwritten, some yellowed with age. A few pages had strange red markings on them. I picked one up. It wasn't a report. It was a list. Dates, times, names, each entry labeled interview. And next to some names, small crosses drawn in the margins. As I was flipping through, the office phone rang. The sound made me jump so hard I dropped the papers. The ringing echoed unnaturally loud in that small space. I hesitated, then picked it up. Dr. Katz's office, I said. Static. Then a man's voice, low and broken. Tell him I'm still waiting in the basement. The line went dead. I hung up and stared at the phone. My own reflection in the dark window looked pale and unreal. I told myself it was a prank, a crossed line, a misdial. But when I crouched to gather the fallen pages, I noticed something else. Under the desk, near the vent, was a dark smear, old, dry, and brownish red. That was when the department custodian, a quiet man named Harvey, appeared in the doorway. Looking for Doc, he asked. Yeah, I said. He's not in his office. Harvey frowned. He passed away years ago. Heart attack. Right at that desk. I froze. That can't be right. I talked to him yesterday. He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. Kid, that office has been locked for months. No one's supposed to have the key. He walked away before I could say another word. That night, when I returned to my basement apartment, I smelled pipe smoke again, drifting through the air vent, soft and sweet. I checked my phone, and a new voicemail blinked on the screen. No caller ID, just breathing, slow, rhythmic, then a whisper. You left the light on in my office. Ever since that day, I still dream of that flickering hallway. And sometimes, I wake up to the faint sound of chalk scraping on my basement wall. Last winter, my cousin Leo and I rented a small hunting cabin deep in the Pennsylvania woods. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend. No phones, no noise, just a fire and a couple days off-grid. Leo had found the place through a private website that listed remote wilderness stays. The photos showed a simple wooden cabin surrounded by endless pine trees. No neighbors, no cell service, no distractions. Perfect. The owner, an older man named Mr. Marin, insisted we arrive before dark. GPS gets confused out here, he said over the phone, his voice slow and gravelly. Once the sun goes down, those woods swallow everything. We laughed it off, but when we arrived, we understood what he meant. The drive took us 4 hours into nowhere, one narrow dirt road winding through dense forest. The trees pressed close, their branches scratching against the truck as we passed. By the time we reached the cabin, the sun was melting behind the ridge, painting the snow orange. The cabin was old but sturdy, single-story, stone fireplace, antlers over the door. Inside smelled like cedar and cold ash. There was no Wi-Fi, no TV, just an old radio and a guest book filled with neat handwriting. The last entry was from nearly 2 years ago. That first night, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you realize how loud the city really is. No cars, no hum of electricity, just the soft crackle of firewood and the wind pushing through the trees. Around midnight, Leo woke me up. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. At first, I thought he meant the wind again. But then I heard it, faint footsteps outside, crunching through snow. Slow, heavy, circling the cabin. We both froze. The only light came from the fire, throwing moving shadows across the walls. Leo grabbed the flashlight, but by the time he reached the window, the sound had stopped. He opened the curtain just enough to peek outside. Nothing, just snow and trees. We told ourselves it was an animal, a deer, maybe, and tried to sleep again. But I couldn't. Every time the fire popped, I flinched. Then, sometime around 2 a.m., I noticed something that made my blood turn cold. The radio, the old one that hadn't worked all night, crackled to life on its own. Through the static, a man's voice whispered softly, "Don't look outside. He's still there." Leo didn't listen. He pulled the curtain anyway. And what he saw standing in the snow wasn't an animal at all. Leo didn't listen. He yanked the curtain back before I could stop him. For half a second, he stood frozen, his breath catching in his throat. Then he whispered, "There's someone out there." I rushed to the window and saw it too. A figure stood just beyond the edge of the firelight, far enough that I couldn't make out his face, but close enough to see the pale reflection of his eyes. He wasn't moving, just standing there, half shadowed by the trees. "Maybe it's the owner," I said weakly. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew I was lying. No one would drive into the woods in the middle of the night without headlights, without a sound. Leo grabbed the poker from the fireplace, and I killed the lantern. The cabin fell into darkness except for the faint glow of the dying embers. We waited. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the crunch of footsteps again, closer this time, circling the cabin. We crept toward the door. Leo pressed his ear against it. The footsteps stopped right outside. We didn't breathe. Then came 3 slow knocks. Not loud, deliberate, like whoever it was didn't want to be invited in, just acknowledged. We stood there in silence, staring at the door until the knock stopped. After a long minute, Leo whispered, "We're leaving at sunrise." Neither of us slept. Every time I started to close my eyes, I'd hear faint movements outside, branches cracking, snow shifting. But when I looked through the window again, the figure was gone. At dawn, we packed up in silence. The woods were eerily still, the snow untouched except for one set of tracks leading away from the cabin. The prints circled the building twice, then trailed off into the trees. But here's the part that made my stomach turn. Each footprint looked too deep, too sharp, like the boots had claws. When we finally reached the highway, Leo turned on the radio to break the silence. Static again. Then, for just a moment, the same distorted voice from the night before came through. "Did you look outside?" it said softly. Leo slammed the radio off. A week later, the cabin's listing vanished from the website. No trace of it anywhere. When Leo called the booking number, a woman answered. She said there hadn't been a Mr. Marin on their roster for years, not since the incident. She wouldn't say what incident. I sometimes dream of that voice in the static, whispering the same warning. Only now, when I wake up, I find fresh snow prints outside my apartment window. I'd worked the late shift at a downtown hotel for nearly a year. Front desk clerk, quiet nights, predictable routines. Nothing strange ever happened past midnight except the occasional drunk guest or someone who locked themselves out. That's why the night of January 19th still burns in my mind. It was almost 2 a.m., snow piling against the glass doors, when a man checked in. Tall, wearing an old brown coat and carrying a leather briefcase. He didn't talk much, just slid his ID across the counter without meeting my eyes. His hands were shaking slightly. Room 704, I told him. Elevators at the end of the hall. He nodded once, took the key card, and disappeared around the corner. When the elevator doors closed, I noticed something odd on the screen behind the desk. The camera feed from inside the lift flickered. For a moment, there was a second figure reflected behind him. Then static. I brushed it off as a glitch. Old building, old wiring. But when I looked again, the elevator had stopped between floors 6 and 7. The lights in the shaft flickered once, then went black. Not again, I muttered and grabbed the service phone. Normally, maintenance could reset it remotely. But before I could dial, the call light on the desk phone blinked. Line 7, elevator emergency. I answered. Front desk, are you okay in there? No voice, just faint breathing and a strange clicking sound, like someone lightly tapping metal. Then a whisper, don't let her out. The line went dead. I froze, staring at the monitor. The elevator lights flickered back on. The man was still inside, except now he was pressed against the wall, staring directly into the camera, eyes wide with terror. I grabbed the radio and called up to security. No response. The hotel was nearly empty. Only 2 floors were occupied. I ran to the elevator hallway, heart pounding, and hit the call button. The doors slid open slowly, empty. No man, no briefcase, just the faint smell of iron and something sweet, like old perfume. A single wet footprint marked the carpet, leading away down the corridor toward room 704. When I followed it, the hallway lights buzzed and dimmed. The door to 704 was already ajar. I hesitated, every instinct screaming to stop, but curiosity pushed me forward. Inside, the room was immaculate except for the mirror above the desk. A handprint smeared across it, small and delicate. And in the reflection behind me, for just a second, I saw a woman standing in the corner, facing the wall. When I spun around, the room was empty, but the elevator bell rang again, and it was coming down from the 13th floor. I stood frozen in the doorway of room 704, my eyes glued to the mirror. The handprint was still there, long, thin fingers streaked slightly downward, like whoever left it had been reaching out. Then came the elevator bell again. One soft chime. Only this time, it shouldn't have rung at all. The hotel had only 12 floors. The sound echoed down the hallway, hollow and metallic. I stepped back into the corridor, trying to convince myself it was just a wiring issue, but my body knew better. That animal instinct that tightens your chest before danger even makes sense. I followed the sound toward the elevator. The display above the doors flickered, 13, 12, 11. I stared. There was no 13th floor in this building. It jumped from 12 straight to the roof. When the doors opened, cold air swept out, carrying the faint smell of lilies. The lights inside flickered weakly, and for a split second, I saw the man's briefcase lying in the corner. The same one from earlier. I called out, "Sir, are you here?" No answer. The doors began to close, and I stuck my arm out to stop them. The moment I did, the elevator groaned and dropped an inch. I jumped back as the lights overhead dimmed again. The panel now showed B1, basement level, but the hotel didn't have one. The phone at the front desk started ringing in the distance. I ran to answer, breath ragged. When I picked up, I heard faint static, and then a woman's voice. Calm, soft, distant. He didn't listen. She told him not to use the elevator. The line cut out. I ran back to the security room, desperate to see the feeds. Most cameras were dead, black screens or static, but one was still active, the inside of the elevator. The line cut out. I ran back to the security room, desperate to see the feeds. Most cameras were dead, black screens or static, but one was still active, the inside of the elevator. The doors had opened again. A woman was standing inside, dressed in an old-fashioned hotel uniform, her hair pinned up neatly. Her face was pale, her eyes unfocused, and behind her, the man's briefcase sat open with papers scattered around it. The timestamp on the video feed wasn't from that night. It was from 1987. As I stared, she turned toward the camera, her lips moving slowly as though whispering something. I turned up the volume. "Never call it down after midnight," she said. "It remembers." The screen glitched, then froze. The woman's face distorted into a blur of static and teeth. The next morning, the elevator technician quit on the spot after seeing the footage. He said the shaft beneath the hotel didn't end at the ground floor. It went one level deeper. When I first moved into my new neighborhood, I thought I'd finally found peace. Quiet street, old trees, friendly neighbors, the kind of place where people waved while mowing the lawn. After years of apartment noise and paper-thin walls, it felt like heaven. But right across from my front porch was a house that didn't belong. It looked abandoned, dark windows, flaking paint, a crooked mailbox. The grass grew knee-high, and the curtains never moved. The locals said it had been empty for years. I believed them, until one night, I saw the upstairs light turn on. It was a soft yellow glow, faint but steady. I remember standing on my porch in disbelief, staring at that single window while the rest of the house stayed pitch black. The next morning, I asked my neighbor, Mrs. Riley, if someone had moved in. She frowned. "That house? No, dear. The owner died there in 2008. His kids tried to sell it, but no one would buy." I laughed nervously. "Maybe someone's squatting?" She shook her head. "If they are, they don't stay long." That night, I couldn't stop watching the house. Around 11:30 p.m., the light flicked on again. Same window, same color. I tried to record it on my phone, but the moment I hit record, the light shut off. The next evening, I left the curtains open and sat by my front window with a cup of coffee, pretending to read. Midnight came and went. Nothing. I almost gave up until I noticed something new. The curtain on the upper window across the street was slightly open, and there, just barely visible behind the glass, was a shape. A person, standing perfectly still, looking right at me. I dropped my coffee. When I looked again, the curtain was shut. Sleep didn't come easy that night. Every creak of the house made me tense. I told myself it was just my imagination, maybe a trick of the light. But then, around 2 a.m., a sound came from outside. A faint click, like the sound of a camera shutter. I looked out my window again, and my stomach dropped. The upper window of the house was glowing once more, and this time, there was a flash. Bright, quick, like a camera going off in the dark. Only one problem. The flash wasn't inside the house. It came from my side of the street. The next morning, I found something new on my porch, a printed photograph of me sleeping in my bed, taken from outside my window. The photo was printed on glossy paper, perfectly centered, no smudges. It showed me lying in bed, blanket pulled halfway up, mouth slightly open, sleeping. The timestamp at the bottom read 2:13 a.m. My stomach turned cold. I lived alone. My bedroom was on the second floor. The only way someone could have taken that picture was from across the street, through that upstairs window. I called the police immediately. 2 officers came within 15 minutes, polite but skeptical. They checked around the house, found no footprints, no tire tracks, nothing. When I showed them the photo, one of them frowned. Could be a prank. Maybe someone used a drone. A drone. At 2 a.m., in total silence. I didn't argue. They promised to file a report and drive by a few times during the night. It didn't help. After they left, I closed every curtain, turned on every light, and sat in the living room until dawn. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. The next day, I decided to end it. I was going across the street. The house looked even worse up close. Cracked windows, broken shutters, a porch that sagged under my weight. The front door was unlocked. I hesitated, then pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Dust, mildew, something faintly metallic. The air was heavy and stale, like no one had breathed in there for years. The living room was filled with old furniture under white sheets, yellowed photographs on the mantel. Every surface was coated in a thin layer of gray. But the strangest thing, the upstairs light was still on. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking. My heart was pounding so hard it drowned out the silence. At the top, the hallway split into 2 rooms. The glow came from the one on the right, the same window that faced my house. The door was half open. I pushed it gently. Inside, there was a camera on a tripod pointed directly at the window. Dust covered the lens, but the battery light was still blinking faintly. Beside it, scattered across the floor, were dozens of photographs, all of me, standing on my porch, reading in the window, sleeping. My hands shook as I flipped through them. The most recent ones had timestamps from last night. Then I saw the newest photo. It wasn't of me at all. It was taken from inside my bedroom. And behind my bed, barely visible in the shadows, was a tall figure, standing perfectly still. I dropped the stack and bolted out of that house, running until I couldn't breathe. When I got home, my front door was already open, and there was a faint yellow light glowing in my upstairs window, even though I'd turned every light off before I left.